Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. 80s Eurovision. An era for the contest which I always find to be somewhat of a transitional period. We're still some way away from the bombastic, bold productions that are so commonplace these days, but the ESC is step by step moving away from its very humble traditional roots. The pop production of the 80s seeps in with each passing year, and by 1986 it's showing signs of morphing into something bigger, and some would argue, better. For this edition, held in Bergen, Norway, has a rather interesting distinction. It would see a long participating nation win for the first, and so far only time, and herald the youngest winner of the Eurovision Song Contest to date. Let's delve into this memorable edition of our favourite music competition and find out more.
Et ceci termine les points attribués par le jury grec. Bonsoir, Verburgh.
Bonsoir, merci.
The previous year, in 1985, had seen long-suffering Norway win for the very first time, having the unfortunate distinction of coming in last place the most times out of any country, as well as receiving the dreaded nil point a handful of times. This was a huge deal for Norway. As a result, the host broadcaster, the NRK, decided to go all out for the 1986 edition. A huge budget was allocated for Eurovision, and this was reflected in the design for the live show, as well as in the diamond-encrusted dress worn by the hostess of the evening, Ace Cleveland, who herself had represented Norway at Eurovision 20 years earlier in 1966. Her efforts saw Norway take a bronze medal then, so having her host the proceedings now seems like an apt choice. She even opened the show with an original song, Welcome to Music, which ended with this hilariously daft homage.
Soon we will know who will be the best in the Eurovision Song Contest.
Classic. I think the host of every edition should be obliged to sing this at the start of every show. Even UK commentator Terry Wogan couldn't believe his ears.
Soon you will know who'll be the best in the Eurovision Song Contest. Katie Boyle never sang, did she?
But what about the contest itself? Well, if you're mostly familiar with Eurovisions of the last 20 years or so, then you'll be shocked to learn things were quite different back in 1986. Just 20 countries took part, and I say just because by today's standards, that's like half the usual pool. But for back then, this was the peak number of entrants. Going over each of them quickly, the main country of interest for 1986 was Iceland, as this was their first ever year of taking part at Eurovision. Their inaugural entry was a group called Icy. Very nice, Iceland, very original. And the song, well, just have a quick look and listen. Yeah, this is the 80s at its peak, isn't it? The suits, the hair, the dancing. Let's move on. Both Yugoslavia and the Netherlands were back in the fold after taking a year out. The former sent a very of the era but very beautifully sung ballad. And the Netherlands, well, they decided to send a group called Frizzle Sizzle. Just watch.
Cute, cute. I like that one.
The Spanish sent a song about a movie star called Valentino. The Irish sent a cute little song sung by a group called Lovebug. You can count on me. You can count on me. And the Swedes sent whatever the hell this is. Luxembourg kicked off the proceedings with a Canadian. And the UK once again tried to convince the rest of the continent how we're oh so cool. The less said about this era for us Brits, the better. I don't care that we won in 1981. I don't care what anyone says. For the most part, the 80s was not a good time for us at Eurovision. Switzerland enticed audiences with one of the strongest performances of the night. Keep them in mind for a little later. The hosts, Norway, sang a song about Romeo. Oh, I'm sorry. And now, a small snippet of all the other entries, because despite having watched this edition in full very recently, I can't remember or tell you anything too memorable about them, so enjoy! But the one act that got everyone talking, for both good and bad reasons, came from Belgium. This is SANDRA KIM, with her song J'aime la vie, which roughly translates to I love life. Musically, by today's standards, you could argue it's hideously dated, but back in 1986, this would have sounded at the forefront of contemporary sounds. Also, it's just a fun little pop bop. And with its upbeat chorus and themes of just loving life, it's an inoffensive song that I'm sure many viewers could get behind in terms of a concept. Vocally, Sandra delivered one of the strongest performances of the night. Singing live is no easy task, no matter how experienced you are. And for Sandra, this was in the relative early days of her career, as she competed at just 15 years old. Allegedly. J'aime la vie was one of, if not the most contemporary song performed at the 1986 Eurovision Song Contest, unless you count the UK, but whereas Sandra Kim aligned more with the bright bubblegum pop, Ryder arguably came across as performing subpar Lionel Richie covers. When the voting procedure began, everyone was excited to see the brand new computerized scoreboard, baby! Oh yeah, let's go! We've truly entered the future now! In reality, computerized scoreboards had become common in the 80s, but it's so funny how primitive this all looks nowadays. The proceedings would play out with relatively few issues, though we do get this little funny flub.
And now we call Ireland and Dublin. Hello, Dublin.
Israel, no, please.
Oh, Israel, I'm sorry.
The first jury to give their votes was Luxembourg. Let's see who takes the early lead.
Netherlands, 1 point. Yugoslavie, 2 points. Yugoslavia, 2 points. Irlande, 3 points. Ireland, 3 points. Royaume-Uni, 4 points. United Kingdom, 4 points. Suède, 5 points. Sweden, 5 points. Turkey, 6 points. Turkey, 6 points. L'Espagne, 7 points. Spain, 7 points. Allemagne, 8 points. Germany, 8 points.
Pour la Belgique, 10 points.
La Belgique, 10 points. Belgium, 10 points.
Et pour la Suisse, 12 points.
Suisse, 12 points. Switzerland, 12 points.
Switzerland, eh? Well, they did give one of the best performances. I wonder if this will mean a closely fought race between a few... No, there was no close race because Belgium absolutely cleaned up.
Belgium, 12 points. Belgium, 12 points. Belgium, 12 points. Belgium, 12 points.
Belgium, 12 points.
Belgium, 12 points.
Belgium ended up winning with a huge, for the time, 176 points, a record that would stand until 1993. They had a 36-point lead over the runners-up, Switzerland, and they had received 5 sets of 12 points and a mammoth 9 lots of 10 points. They were the only country of the night to receive points from every single jury, and bar Germany, who gave them just 1 point, the other 18 juries gave Belgium a minimum of 5 points. A clear winner from almost the very beginning. And so, SANDRA KIM, representing Belgium, was declared the winner of the 1986 Eurovision Song Contest at just 15 years old. Allegedly. Even right there in the moment, commentators were excited to proclaim Sandra as the youngest winner in ESC history, and indeed she was, but a fact would soon come to light that would throw out some shock, as well as prompt some controversy. Shortly after winning Eurovision, it was revealed that Sandra wasn't 15. She was in fact 13. Now, why is this a big deal? Honestly, I'm not too sure myself. At the time, there were no rules regarding how old a participant could be, so Belgium played the game fairly. The loudest shouts came from the Swiss delegation, who of course were the runners-up. They somehow seemed to imply that because Sandra was a child, this somehow gave her an unfair advantage? Again, really not sure where they were trying to go with this. I think they just wanted the win, you know? Switzerland appealed to the EBU to try and get the result overturned, but unsurprisingly, this request wasn't granted. This didn't mean change wouldn't come later down the line. A few years later, in 1989, ironically when the contest was being hosted in Switzerland, there wasn't one, but 2 children representing their countries on the Eurovision stage. You had 12-year-old Gili Netanel from Israel, and 11-year-old Nathalie Pack from France. They placed decently in the final results, with Israel coming 12th and France finishing 8th. However, just as the Swiss had been with SANDRA KIM, numerous competitors at the 1989 contest were not happy at the presence of 2 preteens, feeling that their young age should prevent them from taking part. This time around, the complaints were heeded, and starting from the 1990 contest in Zagreb, participating artists had to be a minimum of 16 years old, a rule that is still very much in place today 35 years later. Young people would eventually get their very own Eurovision, when the junior edition first began back in 2003. This has grown into its own little institution, with a new edition taking place every year since. If 13-year-old SANDRA KIM was trying to enter now, it's the junior Eurovision that she'd have to sing for. Looking back to 1986, was this supposed controversy well and truly overblown? Yes, oh my god, are you kidding me? SANDRA KIM and her team misled everyone about her age, for some reason. Okay, fine. But her being 13 didn't break any rules for the time, and she gave a pretty good vocal performance live on the night. Better than some of her peers from other nations, I'll tell you that much.
I'm sorry.
Her victory was arguably earned, and even though rule changes would come later, she holds an honour that is solely unique to her. Unless the rules change again, allowing younger participants, which is highly unlikely, especially with junior Eurovision existing, SANDRA KIM will always and forever hold the distinction of being the youngest ever winner of the Eurovision Song Contest. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Sean Knock, Dord Khan, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Liam Domain, AJ Mac 200017, Deck, Jen, Traffy, Evan Hart 41, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Marnanel Thurman, John Wakefield, Kieran Bolton, 40-something Manchild, Jerry Ralph, John McLeod, Saint Rocket 9, James Wallace, Ben, Kat Hegarty, Stephen Oliver, Tegan, Shadowfiend 180X, Liam Wigley, and Swan Ronson, our AMTV staff members.